school counselor. Welcome back to the School for School Counselors podcast. I'm Steph Johnson. So excited to be back with you for another episode. And hey, we've had an amazing week this past week in School for School Counselors. If you have not been part of our Facebook group this past week, oh my goodness, you have missed so much awesomeness. We held our free annual Best Year Ever event this past week. It was incredible. So much time with amazing school counseling colleagues from all over the country. A great chance to learn together, to collaborate together, and to share ideas and information. Hands down, the most powerful event that we hold all year long. It was absolutely freaking amazing. And I decided that for this week's podcast, I might give you just a little peek or a recap of a piece of our Best Year Ever event, depending on whether you were there or not, right? If you weren't there, it's going to be a peek into what happened. And if you were there, it's going to be a great reminder for you of some things that you want to do as you prepare to start your school year. Before I jump into that, I do want to share a super awesome review that was left for us on Apple Podcasts, courtesy of Chet and Amy. And the podcast review says, spot on. One of my absolute favorite finds this summer. If you were like me and always searching for relatable information, look no further. I stumbled upon this gem of a podcast recently, and it has quickly become my go-to source for insightful and down-to-earth content. Steph is engaging, relatable, and easy to understand. The wealth of knowledge she has shared, along with the topics covered, left me wanting more. So now I'm not only a listener, but have joined the Facebook group, along with the School for School Counselors Mastermind program, and can't wait to attend the Best Year Ever workshop. Thank you for sharing and providing a space for school counselors everywhere to hone their craft and be their best self. Oh my gosh, you guys, my stars. What a wonderfully humbling review. I just can't thank you enough for that. It's so great to know that what my team and I are endeavoring to produce for you here is hitting home. And I just can't appreciate your kind words anymore. Thank you so much for posting such an incredible review. If you're listening now and you haven't posted a review yet, y'all, we would really appreciate it. It's kind of the currency of the podcasting world. It helps us get shown to folks that might need to hear what we have to say in the podcast. Just hop on over to Apple Podcasts. Leave a quick review. It doesn't have to be as intricate as the one I just read. Just a few sentences would do, but man, it would mean the world to us. Thanks again, Chet and Amy. That was a fantastic review, and so glad that you're in our School for School Counselors world with us. As the review mentioned, the Best Year Ever event just happened. It just finished up a couple of days ago. And like I said, it was amazing. Our favorite time all year long. So if you're not in our Facebook group, make sure you're in there so you can learn about the next one. I'm going to give you a little piece of what we did in that Best Year Ever workshop. This is from night one, kind of the basics of what we did when we talked about reverse engineering your year for success. And it does start a little bit basic. It does start with some things that you're going to be thinking, oh my goodness, for real? But it builds. Give it a chance. It's going to build, and it's going to give you some great ideas and inspiration for your school year coming up. You may also hear me in this clip reference some printable resources, PDF resources, as well as an online portal. All of that can be accessed on our website, schoolforschoolcounselors.com. You're going to go /BYE replays. BYE replays. That stands for Best Year Ever Replays. If you hop on over there, you can get access to all of these materials, all of the replays of all of the workshops, and we only charge you $5 to do it. It's just enough to keep it hosted on the platform. This is not trying to make any money off of anybody. We just want to be able to share these ideas and continue to collaborate. So if you hear something that strikes your fancy, you can hop over there and grab what you need. All right, I'm going to now bring you a little clip from our Best Year Ever event. I hope you enjoy. If we haven't met, I'm Steph Johnson. Of course, you see me all over the School for School Counselors Facebook group. You may have heard me blathering on in the School for School Counselors podcast. I want you to know that this organization, what we're building here, has been a passion project since day one. We got started during the COVID quarantines, 2020. And the reason that we got started was twofold. Number one, I had been in a lot of Facebook groups trying to help people with job interviews. That was kind of originally how it got started. COVID was a weird time. They were freezing a lot of positions. We had a lot of people graduating that didn't know what to do. They weren't able to interview in person. So I was able to kind of help them with the online interviewing thing. And it started to grow so big that we kind of had to start condensing everything in our own group because I was just going everywhere all the time. As we were visiting in that group, and again, during COVID and talking about going back to school, we noticed that no one was really talking about how to serve students once we got back. That was when those Bitmoji offices were a really big deal. I don't know if any of you guys were around and remember that stuff, but everybody was putting together Bitmoji offices. And then that was kind of the extent of the guidance in online counseling. That was pretty much all anybody had. We were linking to games and things like that, but there wasn't a whole lot going on. So we got all of our folks together in our School for School Counselors group, and we crowdsourced a guide. It was called Counseling During COVID. And we pulled everybody's best resources together and made, I don't even remember how many pages it was, but made a guide to kind of try to help things along. And as we did that, we built kind of a core group, what I call my inner circle, started talking about some other things. And one day I said, I really feel like we need a library of all of this stuff that grad school didn't teach us. We need to just compile it in one area. And from there, everything went crazy. And here we are just 3 short years later, we're exploding and we're so excited to be doing that. This is not a side hustle. You'll hear me say that many times. This is not our side hustle. This is a passion project. We're being very mindful of what we're doing within our organization because the ultimate goal is for advocacy. The ultimate goal is to be able to throw a lot of oomph behind advocacy efforts on a larger mass scale while we're teaching school counselors to advocate from the inside out. You'll hear me talk a lot more about that in the future if you haven't already, but just kind of wanted to give you a framework for understanding what it is we do here in School for School Counselors because we're a little bit different than other school counseling groups for sure. All right. So let me jump into the meat and potatoes then tonight. We're going to be talking about reverse engineering your year. Often when we start the school year, we wait. I wait until the day I go on duty. I don't want to think about going back to school until it's time. But part of that is because I've been at this for a little bit, right? And then I get in my office and I'll sit down and think about my schedule. And then all of a sudden, my calendar invites are blowing up. Things are blowing up. I need you to do this. Can we do this? Let's set this up. And things start to go crazy. We don't even wait for the students to get there before we start rocking and rolling. So it's really helpful to kind of have a framework in mind before you even get started. And surprisingly, it doesn't take a lot of time to make that happen. That's what I want to show you today. It's also a really good way to reduce your cognitive load. When you're learning, particularly if you're new, either a new school counselor or new to your campus, there's a lot percolating up there as you're getting started. I would say probably the first 3 years are really kind of a mental overload where you're learning not only how does this campus work, what are kind of its guiding principles, who do you go for what, down to like, where's the copy machine? Where do kids go to pay their lunch accounts? All these little random things that people expect you to know. You're working really hard to try to remember where that information is. How do you access it? Where you go? That kind of stuff. And so when we have some of our year already lined out and streamlined a little bit, it reduces a little bit of that cognitive load. It just takes the edge off a little bit. And I think another great benefit is making some boundaries for yourself. It is very easy to get in the work of your school year and get very busy and start to push things off to the side because you want to help students, right? That's why we got into this line of work, because we want to build relationships with students. We want to help them. We want to make sure they have what they need. And so we tend to try to push all that other stuff off to the side. And we think, I know I'm expected to observe Red Ribbon Week, but I don't have time to plan that. Let me just push it off. And then you keep pushing and you keep pushing because more and more stuff comes. And then all of a sudden it's the middle of September or the beginning of October. And you're like, dang it, I wish I would have pre-planned that. And so this is going to reduce some of that. Typically in those situations, at least for me, I would take that stuff home and work on it at night. And I would try to plan events at night, spend my time during the day with students. But all that's doing really is kind of just moving your boundaries around a little bit. And you may be okay with that, and that's fine. But if you're not, if you want a little bit more definition between your workday and your home life, this is going to help you do that too, because you're going to have those things in mind, in line, and ready to go. Does that make sense? Okay. So let me show you what we have for you tonight. And again, these resources are in your portal already, but I'm going to be putting them up here for you so that you've got them. Okay. We're going to start here with creating a yearly plan. This is going to walk you through all of the components of this pre-planning. And again, there may be other things that come to mind as you're listening. And if you think of something, shout them out. Help us out and we'll add it to our list as well. All right. Okay. So starting with basic dates. As we get started with this, some of the things that you hear me say, you're going to be like, really? This is what I showed up for? I promise you, we're building to something better. We've got to get the fundamentals in place so you can really see the whole picture so that you'll be able then to do some of that higher level planning. So bear with me for just a minute. We're going to start with our basic dates, our campus non-negotiables, the things that have to happen, state testing dates, ACTs, SATs, any of that kind of stuff. You want to go ahead and put it on your calendar and have it in mind. Your local testing windows. If you're doing gifted and talented testing, if you do special education testing within a certain time frame, not a lot of campuses are lucky enough to have that flexibility anymore with sped rates just skyrocketing, but some still do. Map testing, benchmark testing, finals, whatever it is, go ahead and find those dates and put it on your calendar. Even if you're not responsible for testing, you're not a test coordinator on your campus, you want to have those testing dates down so you know when students aren't going to be available. Those are going to be great times to schedule other things in your day. You'll notice we've kind of made this in a checklist fashion with bullet points so that it should be really, really easy to follow as you start doing this for yourself. Local celebration dates. So when I talk about local celebration dates, what I mean is anything unique to your location or to your campus. If you have any district-wide events that are a big deal, I used to work in a tiny little district that had a big track day for all of its students from pre-K all the way through the 12th grade. That was a big day for us. So that had to go on the calendar. I had to know that was coming up. And then any local events, college and career weeks, Red Ribbon Weeks, those kinds of things, you want to just put all of those down. Anything that you're celebrating on your campus so that you have it on your calendar. Easy enough, right? Easy enough. Okay. Then we want to go to our meeting or professional development days for our campus and for our district. Sometimes you don't get those until you get back on duty, and that's okay. But once you get them, go ahead and put those on your calendar so you have them. And then any professional organization conferences or trainings, we're talking national organization here, a state organization, maybe a local chapter. I put the ASCA conference date for next year to be in Kansas City, Missouri, July 13th through 16, 2024. I'd love for you to come join me. I did not go to Atlanta this year. I was doing something else that I have to say was a little bit more cool even than ASCA, which is saying a lot. Maybe I'll tell you about it later, but next year I plan on being in Kansas City, Missouri, and would love for you to join me there. Any large due dates, registrations, deadlines, any kind of anything like that. Just kind of walk through what you have already and say, is there a due date? Is there a deadline of some sort? Plug those in. If you have grading period dates or deadlines, plug those in, even if you're not responsible for grading. In the high school, grading periods are going to be a big deal. You're monitoring failures, you're monitoring transcript stuff. But even in elementary and middle school, those are going to be big dates for us. Teachers tend to test very heavily around the end of grading periods, trying to get the rest of those in. It may be harder to pull students because of that. And then last on this page, any awareness dates that you'd like to observe. Red Ribbon Week, National School Counseling Week, Random Acts of Kindness Week. We went ahead and put those 3 up. Those seem to kind of be the big 3 as far as our audience is concerned. Those are the ones we hear the most about throughout the year. Go ahead and plug those in on your calendar. Doesn't necessarily mean that you have to do something for them, but you might want to. So it's good to know that they're there. All right. Any questions about that? All right. And I'll give you a caveat just really quickly as we're talking through meeting days, professional development days, and you'll hear me say this, I'm sure, again tonight. Those tend to also be the days when you have to be off campus, that somebody decides they're going to make an outcry. They're going to have a crisis of some kind. And I'm being flip about that. Of course, they don't decide. It's one of those things. But those meeting dates you have to be off campus, those kinds of things can be kind of tricky. So it's good to have those on your calendar just to kind of be thinking of some backup plans for when you're away. So that's another helpful use of that kind of information. Let me stop real quick and see. Everybody doing okay so far? Like I told you, this is pretty basic, right? But we're going to be moving on up into some better stuff here in just a minute. I'm checking my chat comments. I want to make sure that I'm not missing anything. All right. Tell me, before we move on, how are you keeping your calendars now? Or how do you plan on keeping your calendar? Is it going to be online? Are you going to keep an electronic calendar, Outlook, Google Calendar? Are you going to use paper? Are you going to use a hybrid? Or you just have no idea yet? Kind of pop it in the chat. I'd be interested to know. Let's see, paper, Google, Outlook, paper, online paper. Looks like most of us are kind of doing a hybrid of most of them. Awesome. I'm old-fashioned paper. I saw that go by. I feel the same way. Awesome. So I'm seeing lots of folks doing hybrid. Seeing a couple people using our School for School Counselors Planner. If you haven't grabbed that yet, that's a cool resource. We've in the past charged for that, but we decided the last couple of years have been pretty tough. We wanted a way to love on everybody. We put our heart and soul in that planner. We work on it for months and months and months, constantly refining it, constantly taking everybody's suggestions into account and trying to make it better and better every year. So if you need a copy of that, please know you can hop over either on our website. Maybe we can throw a link in the chat here. You can hop over and grab that. We're not charging you anything for it. We just want you to have a great year. All right. I'll tell you, I was counting up this morning. I was thinking about getting ready to talk to you all the planners that I use. How many calendars do I have going in my life? So I have to look at my list because there's a lot. I have my Outlook calendar at work. That's where my admin team sends me all the invites. We keep everything straight and we know who's doing what. I use a SCUDA calendar for documenting my time. That's required by my school district. And it's been a great change that we've made in the last few years. It's been really telling. Then I have my personal school counseling calendar on paper, the planner that we put out for all you guys. I use exactly the same thing. I have a home planner at home that helps me keep track on all my home activities, what I need to do when I get home, because I don't want to look at the work stuff anymore. And then I have multiple School for School Counselors planners going also. It's crazy, but I bet you guys are pretty much the same, right? You have kids in extracurricular activities. You have your own interests and things. We have calendars everywhere. So the trick is just figuring out how to make those work together in perfect harmony. All right. Let me get back to our PDF here and let me show you a little bit more. So now we have those basic dates. We've gone through page 1 and we're done with that. We're going to go to page 2. Now, this is some of the stuff that sometimes people forget. And again, it's going to sound a little basic getting started out, but it's also stuff you don't want to miss because this stuff is going to kind of catapult you up into next level relationships on your campus. There are always huge debates in Facebook groups, and I don't really know why. Maybe I just have a different viewpoint than a lot of people about whether or not you should recognize your staff or whether you should stay away from that. I am very much of the opinion that the more we can lift each other up on a school campus, the better off we're all going to be. Education is hard work, and everybody on your campus is stressed. Everybody feels overwhelmed. It's just the nature of the beast. That's just working in schools. And so if I have the opportunity to, encourage someone, lift them up, I'm going to do that. That doesn't mean that needs to be a big grand gesture. Doesn't mean it needs to be expensive, but I do want to do something. So mark those staff recognition days in your planner. Mark birthdays. If you're lucky enough to get a birthday list from your administrator, hopefully they have one. Hopefully they're building that positive culture for their staff. Go ahead and jot everybody's birthdays down. I have a staff on my campus of close to 85, 90 people now. So for me to go out and buy something for everybody for their birthday, if it was something big, I wouldn't be able to do, but I can't go seek them out and intentionally tell them happy birthday, right? And the important thing is just that they're remembered. That's what most people want anyway. National School Psychology Week is one that you don't hear about a lot in a lot of schools. It kind of gets overlooked. School psychs kind of work in the background. So we really want to make sure we've got that in our planner. Diagnostician appreciation. Those are some of your other folks that do some of your testing for you. If you have DAGs in your district, usually the first full week of March, not always, but usually the first full week of March. Administrative Professionals Day, Teacher Appreciation Week, School Nurse, School Principals. Of course, there are more custodian appreciation, bus driver appreciation. For brevity here, we didn't include every single thing. ASCA puts out a calendar you can go grab. We didn't want to repeat that. All right. So now that we have those basic events down, this is when we want to start kind of the more intense work. We want to go in and reverse engineer our events. We want to start looking at school-wide activities, the things we know we're going to be doing. For instance, I know I'm going to be hosting a career day every year. I know I'm going to be hosting a college week every year. I know that Red Ribbon Week is expected every year. Those kinds of things I've already noted on in my calendar. I'm going to go reverse engineer those dates. I'm going to walk backward through the process to figure out what are the things that need to happen. What are the materials I need to make that possible? Who are the people that need to be involved? How far ahead do I need to start really getting this together so that when the date gets here, I'm ready to go? I don't want you to be stuck, with a week and a half left and you're scrambling trying to put something together. That's never any fun. So you're just going to reverse engineer those events. Same thing for testing dates or testing preparation. Some of you are still responsible for coordinating testing on your campuses. Reverse engineer those dates. If you're not in charge of testing, you still might want to reverse engineer those dates, particularly if you have students that you're working with respect to testing concerns, test anxiety, those kinds of things, growth mindset, to make sure that they're really set and ready to go by the time the testing date gets there. So you could note that in your calendar. End of year duties, if you're responsible for any kind of graduation coordination, awards assemblies, end of year transcripts, end of year grade reports, anything like that. Your end of year data report, if you're running your use of time data, go ahead and note those on your calendar and reverse engineer those. It could be something as simple as just giving yourself a reminder. When I started reverse engineering events, I would put, Red Ribbon Week, October 27th through whatever. I don't even remember the dates this year, but Red Ribbon Week. And then I would go and say 2 weeks till Red Ribbon Week. And then I would go back a few more weeks, 4 weeks till Red Ribbon Week, just so that I had it in my mind and it didn't escape me. And then once I went through those events a couple times and I knew pretty much what I wanted to do, then I could sit down and reverse engineer the particulars. So don't feel like this is something where you're just locked in and you have to do it a certain way. It's whatever works for you. The point is just having them in mind so that you're prepared. I don't want them to come up and bite you later because you didn't have them on your radar. After all of that stuff has been entered, after you've gone through all of these things, you've done your basic dates, your non-negotiables, your professional development dates, large due dates, awareness dates, staff recognition dates, other dates, all the things. You put all those in there. You reverse engineer all of them. Then add your other availability. This conversation is going to hurt some of your hearts, and I'm sorry, but I just want to be real about it. Some of you are working on campuses where you do not yet have the latitude to determine when your lessons are taught, which is a shame and is a big part of some of the advocacy initiatives that we have kind of in the pipeline. We're thinking through how best to confront this because it's a huge concern. So if you don't have the autonomy to determine when and how your lessons happen, just kind of take a breather on this one. But if you are able to do that, this is when you would plug that lesson availability in. Don't forsake the nuts and bolts of your program for trying to get in. I've got to get every grade level in, twice a week till the end of time or however it is you want to do it. Be intentional with scheduling your lessons. If you're not able to get to them as often as you would prefer, and it's just really bothering you, it's way easier to bump it up later than it is to dial it back, right? So start conservatively and then kind of work your way up as you work through your year. Small group availability, same thing. Don't overwhelm yourself stacking things back to back to back to back to back, trying to fill every hour of every day with all this stuff. You also want to intentionally schedule some white space in your calendar because you're going to have stuff coming up. And I would say even the bigger this is personal opinion. This is not research based, but anecdotally, I would say the bigger your campus, actually, the more white space you need to schedule because there's a greater probability of something coming out of the blue that you didn't expect. Availability for individual students. If you like to kind of schedule those in chunks, you would do that at this time, as well as any school-wide data efforts. If you're going to be doing minute meetings, if you're going to be doing needs assessments, if it sounds like I'm speaking another language right now, don't worry. We're going to talk about that. We're going to get all up in minute meetings and needs assessments and everything you need to know about those. So don't panic, but do know if you're going to implement some of those, this is the time you would put it in your calendar. All right. Any questions about any of that so far? I do want to warn you before we move on to the next thing, just be a little careful and cautious. Again, if you're new to school counseling or if you're new to your campus, about jumping in and scheduling all the things. That's what we always want to do when we get started. We want to come in. We want to make these huge changes. Secretly, I think we really do want everybody to love us and be like, where has this person been all these years? We're so glad they're finally here, right? And so we jump in and we start throwing all this stuff in the campus. And what we end up doing is overwhelming ourselves, completely overwhelming ourselves. And then when we have to step backward later, we have to kind of pull out of some of the things that we'd implemented. It makes us feel bad. It makes us feel like we're not making the grade. Perhaps it gives the appearance that, we couldn't handle it, right? We couldn't handle the heat in the kitchen kind of a thing. We do not want to do that. So as you're planning for your year, just be very mindful of how many things you are putting in that calendar. My advice is to start with the bare minimum. And I know that sounds so anti-overachiever, and you guys are all overachievers. That's why you're here. But just be really, really careful. You can always build up later. It's really hard to dial it back. With that added cognitive load that we were talking about earlier, trying to remember all the things, whose room is where, which grade levels are on which hallways. This person likes this, but doesn't like this. I go to this person for that. The copy code is this, all the things. We don't want to be adding all this extra stuff on top of it. You'll have time. You'll have time to start that stuff. I would say your first 2 years in particular, perhaps your third, depending on how they're going, are really your watch, listen, and learn years. If you can really just kind of I'm not saying don't work hard, but just don't overreach. You will learn more about your campus. You will be able to build stronger relationships, better foundations on that campus if you are intentionally and mindfully watching and listening. I'm telling you, that is like the key to the kingdom on a campus. You can be ready to help. You can have great ideas. You can be a go-getter, but just don't go too hard. Think of it as a marathon and not as a sprint, if that helps. Back before I had kids 100 years ago, I used to run marathons, and I don't really know why I did it, because when I signed up for my first marathon, I couldn't run around the block. Literally could not run around the block. And I came home and told my husband, I signed up to run a marathon, and he laughed at me and he was like, there's no way you're going to do this. And I'm like, oh yeah, but this is happening because I just wanted to see if I could do it. Are any of you like that? You just want to take a challenge on to see if you can do it. So I started training for this marathon, and it was great. And I ended up running, I had 5 or 6 of them. Loved it. I was not a fast runner. I was a slow runner, and we're talking like 18-minute miles. I got passed up one time in a race. This is a true story, by a lady who was 7 months pregnant, and also by a man that was celebrating like a 75th birthday or something like that. He was an elderly dude, and he just passed us right up, but we didn't care. I had a best friend that ran with me. We ran as a team, and we did not care because the party was always in the back of the race. That was where people were cheering each other on. We were getting to know the people that were running around us. We were encouraging them when things got tough. That's where, to me, the best part of the race was in the back. Up in the front of the race, people were pumping it out, right? They were competing. They were the extreme athletes or whatever. They didn't have time to pay attention to what anybody else was doing. They were literally running their own race, but in the back. It was such a great time. And we were able to really enjoy the race. And even now, years later, my best girlfriend and I will tell stories about, remember at that race, that time that thing happened? Remember when we got passed by that lady that was 7 months pregnant and she waved at us? That's where all your greatest experiences, relationships, and things come from. So don't forget that as you're starting your school counseling year, even if you've been doing this a while. Don't forget to enjoy the party in the back of the race. You don't always have to be running at the front. Nobody's going to give you a prize for being, ultimate endurance school counselor of the year. Typically, that's not going to happen, but just run your own race and don't feel like you have to keep up with all the people in the front who are supposedly doing all the things. And I can tell you firsthand that a lot of the things that you see reported in social media, in the emails that you get and that kind of stuff are not necessarily happening the way that you're being led to believe. So just don't worry about anybody else and just enjoy the party. Enjoy getting to know the people around you. It makes it all worth it. I promise. Hey there, school counselor. I hope you enjoyed that little taste of our Best Year Ever event. From that little workshop that we started off with on night 1, we dove into so many more things like student confidentiality, the confidentiality principles that you weren't taught in grad school and definitely need to know. We talked through how to create a jump file of resources for your year at your fingertips so you're never left scrambling, looking for things. And we talked through needs assessments, minute meetings, social emotional screeners, the legalities and caveats of those, all of the things you need to know before you administer any kind of a survey on your campus. Y'all, it was all in Best Year Ever. If you'd like to grab a copy of the replays and the resources, again, just head on over to schoolforschoolcounselors.com/BYE replays. We would love for you to take a look, take a listen. Let us know what you think. We are always striving to do better and better for you year after year. We want to be your biggest cheerleader and your biggest source of inspiration in your school counseling career. You may also want to know, as we're wrapping up this episode, that we have another amazing event coming down the pipeline. We strive to over-deliver all the time, and this year will be no exception. we are going to be opening our new Counselor Academy here in just a couple of days. You can go hop in the wait list, schoolforschoolcounselors.com/academy. We'll get you all the information once that's open, but we're going to be walking through the fundamentals for new school counselors, anybody in their first, second, or perhaps even their third year of school counseling. We want to show you the ins and outs, the ups and downs, and all the little things that you can do to help your year go more smoothly. So if you're interested in that, hop on over to the website for more information, schoolforschoolcounselors.com/academy. All right, my friend, that's all I have for you this week, but keep listening. We're going to be back soon with another amazing episode of the School for School Counselors podcast. Until then, I hope you have the best week ever. Take care.